Hi all, happy Monday. Welcome to the Wife of Caesar. My name is Michele Bien, or Michele Bien, either's fine. As you know, the Wife of Caesar is Streiner's project to talk about corruption or anti-corruption using everyday words so that we can fight corruption in our day-to-day lives with a little bit more than just good intentions. As with every show, we will have a piece of news, a case, and a typology, and we will take you through them and give you our opinion on why they are relevant to the world of anti-corruption. The news today deals with Mr. Carlos Ahumada. Now, Carlos Ahumada is a business person from Argentina who used to do a lot of business in Mexico. He was relatively famous. He became relatively famous or infamous around 2003 and 2004, where he released tapes of public officials working for the government of Mexico City, and where the public official in question was videotaped. Is actually very embarrassing. Was videotaped receiving large amounts of money, and the sum of money, the actual bills were so many that he couldn't fit them in a briefcase, and he was actually seen stuffing his jacket pockets with the cash. All very compromising and embarrassing. Now, what happened now? He was arrested in Argentina by Interpol under charges of tax fraud or tax evasion. What happened was that back then he actually spent time in prison. He tried to flee to Cuba. He was arrested in Cuba. He was brought back to Mexico, and he spent time in prison. Now he did his time and he went back to Argentina, and that was that. Or apparently not exactly. What happened is that back then he was the romantic partner of Ms. Rosario Robles Berlanga, who, as you know, if you watch The Wife of Caesar, last week we discussed, she was a Secretary of State in two different secretaries in Mexico in the past administration, and she has been apprehended for her involvement in a 5 billion pesos bribery scheme. Now, they were romantically involved at the time, and as you know, as I previously mentioned, Ahumada released the tapes of him paying or his company paying bribes to the government of Mexico City. The person in question was René Bejarano, who again spent time in prison after the scandals leaked and was released from prison. Now, Bejarano, what is he doing right now? Well, he's working for the federal government. Back then, he used to work for the government of Mexico City, and his boss was none other than now President Andrés Manuel López Obrador. So it all becomes very suspicious, because back then, Ahumada and his people decided to release the tapes involving Bejarano in improper acts. And now that the government, that Mr. Andrés Manuel López Obrador and Bejarano are in the federal government, they are apparently going after Ms. Rosario Robles and Mr. Ahumada. Now, this is not to say that they're not doing anything wrong. It just smells of impropriety. As of Sunday morning, Mr. Ahumada was released by the Argentinian judge that had ordered his apprehension. And this is because, as I mentioned earlier, he was apprehended under charges of tax evasion, tax fraud. So essentially failing to pay income tax to the government of Mexico. However, his attorneys in Argentina presented before the judge a finalized audit for 2008, the year where he was accused of committing fraud against the authorities. And this audited report essentially states that his fiscal obligations have been met. So the Argentinian judge obviously reviewed this, and after validating the documents, decided to release Mr. Ahumada on his own recognizance, to release him from jail, claiming that the accusation was absurd. That doesn't mean that he is without the reach or outside the reach of justice. That means that he is free in Argentina, and he might again be apprehended, but the Mexican government will have the burden of proving that he more than likely committed a crime. Again, these are all still at the level or the stage of accusation, and as the trials of Ms. Robles and Mr. Ahumada continue, we will let you know of any news. Okay, let's move on to the case. Today we have Tunisia. As a few of you might know, Transparency International, the international watchdog for anti-corruption, turned 25 this year. And to commemorate that event, they released a list of the 25 most outrageous corruption scandals. And Tunisia is next on our list of running them down and explaining them. Now, what happened with Tunisia. To give you a little bit of background, after Tunisia gained its independence, it was ruled by the same person until 1987, where he was deposed by force by its president or its prime minister, Mr. Zine al-Abidine Ben Ali, or just Ben Ali. Now, Ben Ali ruled for 23 years from 87 to 2001. What happened there was that in 2001, his government was overthrown in the context of what has become known as the Arab Spring. This movement, this revolutionary movement that was born of social media, wherein several countries in the Middle East toppled their governments. And why the government of Mr. Ben Ali? Well, several accusations of major acts of corruption. If you check out the list, the Transparency International list, you'll notice that it begins with an interesting note. There are no McDonald's restaurants in Tunisia. And this is because the person who obtained the master franchise, the right of using the name in a country, in Tunisia, was not a friend of the government of Ben Ali. Mr. Ben Ali was allegedly, or he was a noted nepotist, and that means that he only did favors for his friends and his associates and blocked everyone else from doing business. What he and his people did for 23 years was modify procedural rules and laws in Tunisia to make it very, very difficult to obtain business licenses and operational licenses in Tunisia. So if you weren't in bed with them, or if you weren't somehow beholden to them or related to them, then you could not do business in Tunisia. Obviously, this hurt internal commerce greatly, and it is alleged, or at least well documented, that Ben Ali and his cronies stole around $13 billion. That's billion with a B, so quite a lot of money. Why is this relevant? It's just not a case of ordinary corruption. Well, it mixes political corruption and grand corruption into two. As you might remember, political corruption is the manipulation of procedural rules or public policy to maintain power, wealth, or both. And in this case, this is exactly what Ben Ali and his cronies did. They manipulated the rules of the game or the procedural rules to obtain licenses to favor their friends. Also, this is a case of grand corruption because, as you will remember, grand corruption is any act of corruption that implies graft of over around $10,000 US and violation of the human rights of major groups, both of which occurred in Tunisia. So it's a model case of how bad a government can turn. What happened in 2011 with the Arab Spring movement was that Ben Ali had to flee the country with his wife into Saudi Arabia, where they were last seen. They are still absconded. They have still absconded from the law. What also happened here that's very interesting and doesn't take place very often is that they were tried in absentia. A trial in absentia means that you take a person to trial even though they are not there, in absence of the accused. This is very rare, and in international courts and reputable courts very rarely do this because it might entail violation of the human rights of the accused. He's not really there, or she's not really there to defend themselves. But in this case, the new government of Tunisia found that Ben Ali's actions were so severe and so egregious that they decided to make a valuable exception. So imagine, if you can, that governments tend to shy away from a practice. They never ever do something, but you were so corrupt that a government decided to make a special exception for you. Well, this is the case of Ben Ali. Okay, let's move on to the typology. Today I get to talk to you about Silk Road. For those of you who don't know, Silk Road was a dark web marketplace wherein you could purchase weapons, drugs, even people, organs, a whole lot of illegal stuff online. But let me have someone else explain it to you.
Krieger's selling the cocaine online. Are you insane?
Yeah, if it's insane to use an X-Gen asymmetric onion router and digital cryptocurrency to sell your cocaine anonymously and completely risk-free. or a lot of the other shit I do.
But so do people email you or?
No, it's like shopping online, only for cocaine. I've already sold, wow, almost 800 grand worth.
Really? But how do we get paid?
With a totally untraceable digital currency that we can exchange for real US dollars whenever we want. I call them Kriegerans.
Okay, and as Dr. Krieger very aptly put it, what he does, or what the Silk Road used to do, was a two-pronged security approach. They would use a Tor or an onion router system where they would sell the merchandise and they would get paid using cryptocurrency. Now, let's take it piece by piece. What is an onion router? As the name might suggest, it is a router system that operates in layers. So we're not electronics or computing experts, so we will do our best efforts to explain it. The way it works, you might have heard about Tor. That's the acronym for the Onion Router, the original name of the project. And the way it works is, generally, when you use a computer, your computer sends a request to the other computer on the other end, and then both computers know where the message originates and where it is delivered. What the Onion Router does, it separates these messages into several parts or layers, and this way the original message goes to through several middlemen or middle computers. So this way, you only know to which computer you originally sent the message, but then intermediary A sends it to B, and B to C, and C to D, and so on and so forth. That way, the final receiver only has knowledge that it received the message from the final intermediary, but it doesn't know where it originally originated. And the same applies for the original sender, and that way the communications are completely anonymous. And the way they do payment now, they use cryptocurrency, and you might have heard about crypto from the most famous one, Bitcoin. And we talked about Bitcoin and how it's used in covert or illegal, improper operations. And essentially, cryptocurrencies such as Line, Ethereum, Bitcoin, and all of those are untraceable assets that can be cashed out for money at any time. So pairing that, an untraceable asset with an untraceable operation, means that you can buy and sell illegal merchandise online. Okay, so that was it for today. Thank you for joining us. I will leave you, as I always do, with this. Corruption should be denounced. Every act of corruption should be denounced. So please raise your voice and blow the whistle, but do so safely. If you're not sure whether or not what you're looking at is corruption, or you're not sure whether or not you're safe, don't do anything. Reach out to people who might be able to help you. Feel free to reach out to us at info@streiner.mx, and we will be glad to help you. Or log into streiner.mx, where you will find detailed instructions on how to make an anonymous report using the dark web so that it's completely anonymous and safe. But above all, please stay safe. Again, this has been the Wife of Caesar. My name is Michel Bien, or Michel Bien, either is fine, and have a happy Monday.